Vesper's mother had died not long after she was born, and she knew her only through the stories told to her by Magda and her father. Stories that made her out to be more like a goddess of myth and legend than a woman of flesh and blood. As a result, to Vesper she was larger than life. A great warrior who held their countless enemies at bay with her skill and cunning. A powerful djembe that bent the universe to her will, perfect, without flaws. But the voice echoing all around her sounded nothing like that. Lilith's words tumbled from the darkness with a very mortal mix of joy and sadness, love and loss. "My child, look at you," the spirit said, her tone full of awe. "I am filled with such pride. You are beautiful, strong, and powerful. I am filled with sadness for every day that I've missed." "Father and Magda, they told me you were dead," repeated Vesper, letting out a slow breath, and fighting to hold back hot tears. The last thing she wanted was for her mother to see her as blubbering mess. Magda, Olajume protect her soul, had done her best to raise her, protect her, and from now to the end of her days, Vesper would hold her memory dear to her heart, but she was not her mother. Not dead. Just lost, but I am with you now. I love you, and once we escape from this place, I promise I'll never leave your side again. To hear her mother say that she loved her, that she was proud of who she had become made her heart sing. It made her want to spin in place and shout with joy. But she couldn't, not here, not while they were in so much danger. Vesper took a deep breath to steady herself, to calm the torrent of laughter and tears that threatened to overwhelm her. When at last she felt ready, she squared her shoulders, cleaning her face. "What must I do to get us out of here? And away from Jufari?" Lilith was silent for a few moments, and Vesper worried she had said something wrong, but when her mother spoke at last, her tone was grim. "There is no other way, we must kill him," began Lilith, "and use his dying spirit to snap us back to where this journey began." Vesper stifled a gasp, worry bubbling up in her stomach. "I'm not like you, Mother. Until earlier tonight I had never touched a weapon, and I only used the weave for the first time yesterday." The spirit recoiled, its scream wailing across the barren landscape. "Magda has truly failed in her duty, failed you," said Lilith with some heat in her voice. "By the time we were your age we had already fought and bled for our people, we were seasoned warriors." "I'm sorry," said Vesper, bowing her head while wringing her hands. "I did my best. But I did not know any of this, about the Chosen until a few days ago. It is not your fault, daughter. Magda was always too cautious, always afraid of her own shadow." Vesper let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, tension draining from her shoulders. "So what do we do?" "A dangerous thing. If you are brave enough," said Lilith, speaking slowly. Vesper perked up, hope coming to her eyes. "Anything. I will do anything. I'm not afraid." "Good. This will be difficult, but together we will succeed. I am sure of it." "Tell me," said Vesper, bouncing with anticipation, her heart racing. "I will mount you, and we shall combine our spirit and flesh into one being. Once we are together, I will be in control, and will use everything I know, all of my power to have revenge on this murder, and hopefully get us home." Vesper had heard of such superstitions, of calling powerful spirits known as Loe with offerings or sacrifice. The hope would be that the netherworld being would do you some favor, or grant you some boon, and in rare cases, do as her mother had said, to join spirit to flesh and grant the summoner great power for a short time. Magda said the Loe were not real, that they were made up by charlatans to trick the gullible. "Yes. And no," said her mother, sounding like she was searching for her words. Some pretend that the Loe have mounted them, hoping to curry favor with the foolish, but the Loe are very real. Some are kind, others very dangerous, but all are hungry to join their spirit with a summoner's body, always wanting more. But this won't be the same. I am not some distant spirit wanting a taste of flesh. We are kin, and I will return control to you once we are safe. How do I? Do I have to do something? How does it work? Asked Vesper, rubbing her arms and feeling foolish. Vesper had the impression, once again, of the voice coming closer, its whisper sending a chill over her scalp, like fingers were touching her skin. You must call to me, call on my power, invite me in, so to speak. And there must be an offering, said Lilith. Some part of you given freely, blood, or a bit of hair. But the blood works best. I don't have anything to cut, she said, looking around for something that would do the job. The rock, your hand, quickly, snapped her mother. Jufari returns. What? How do you? How can you see anything in this gloom? She said, racing back along the path to the crossroad where the Sandaway had left her. It was my trick that sent him away, said Lilith, and now he will return soon. We must hurry. I will give you the words that must be said to summon me. The darkness became a blur as she pumped her legs as quickly as they would take her, absorbing her mother's words for the summoning. Vesper arrived at the rock and quickly fell to her knees, gasping for breath while she hunted for an edge sharp enough to do what had to be done. A voice in the distance called to her, full of anger. You think Papa Jufari be a fool? Shouted the Sandaway. Vesper glanced over her shoulder to find Jufari charging toward her, the strange animal horns on the sides of his head bouncing wildly, his face a mask of rage. You try and trick me, no. I will not allow that. I will punish you for this. Make you learn not to trifle with me. Seeing him so close, Vesper rushed to slice open her hand on the jagged stone, only to squeal when Jufari yanked her back by her hair, throwing her bodily like a child's toy. The air was blasted from her lungs when she landed on her back a few feet away, skidding along the cobblestones until she came to a grinding halt, arching her back and rolling onto her side in a vain attempt to escape the pain. She opened her eyes to find him towering above her, frothing at the mouth. I was trying to be good to you, to show you some kindness, but now, I'm gonna go back, kill the rest of your people as punishment for your disrespect. Then I'm gonna sell you to the worst of the worst, so you gonna spend the rest of your days wishing for the kindness of Papa Jufari. Mother. Please, she rasped through the hurt, her back and head throbbing. Jufari's lips twisted into a cruel smile and he shook his head. Call to your ancestors all you want, girl, he began, slapping her with the back of his hand, sending her reeling from the blow, seeing stars. No one here but you and me, he continued, Vesper tasting blood in her mouth when he slapped her again, harder this time. Spots appeared in the corners of her eyes as she fought to stay conscious. Her face and back were on fire, pulsing with more pain than she had ever known. Vesper wanted nothing more than to give up, to fall into the blissful release of death and leave the world behind. And she almost did, it felt easy in this place. But then she remembered the suffering on her aunt's face when Jufari's spear ripped through her chest. She pictured him killing the people of her village. Mothers, fathers, and children not old enough to understand hate. Every last one of them would be killed or enslaved by this monster. And her mother, who she had just found, would be trapped here forever with the rest of the damned. No, she shouted. I'll kill you first. Jufari pulled back to strike her again and, in a fit of desperation she rolled onto her side, and grabbed at his leg, digging her teeth into his flesh. Jufari's eyes shot open, and a vile screech spilled from his throat as he reached down to tear her off of him. Vesper railed, adrenaline giving her the strength to hold on to his leg for dear life. "Enough," he shouted, lifting her bodily by the hair once more and pulling hard enough that Vesper had to let go or risk losing her teeth. Jufari pulled her close, and she retched in disgust at his rancid breath. "You always think you still rule Africa, that you have power, but you are nothing more than Roman lapdogs begging for scraps at your master's table. And soon you will be no more, forgotten like you never was, and the Sandaway will rule once again." Looking into Papa Jufari's milky gaze, Vesper squeezed her eyes shut, using all her strength to hold herself up so that her hair wouldn't tear away from her scalp. "You must be brave," whispered Lilith in her ear. "Be brave for me, for all those that have fallen, be brave for Magda." Vesper had never been brave, she never had to be. Magda had sheltered her, protected her from the world. "I'll try," she whispered through the shooting pain in her scalp. Papa Jufari narrowed his milky gaze, glancing around in confusion. "Who you speaking to? Do you be foolish enough to answer the damned?" he demanded, throwing his head back with a mocking laugh. Seeing that his milky gaze was not on her, Vesper desperately lunged for the bone-handled dagger on his hip, needles of sharp pain exploding from her skull when all her weight was suddenly supported by her hair. With a growl she tore the weapon from the sheath on his hip, slashing clumsily and cutting deep into his arm. Jufari let go with a surprised yelp, and she fell at his feet in a heap, brandishing the blade in front of her like a shield while she scurried back. "You're the only one here who is damned. You think this be something," he said, frowning at the cut on his arm with a shrug. "This is nothing. You think that blade can hurt Papa Jufari? No fool O's, I gonna take your scalp. You can still be pretty without that mess you call hair." "Yes, pretty. Vesper drew in a shuddering breath, trying to calm her fear as he stalked closer to her with a feral grin on his face. "It's not for you," she said, flipping the blade and plunging it into her palm, beginning the chant her mother had taught her only moments before. "Come to me, Lilith." In front of her Jufari stopped cold, his milky eyes going wide with shock. "No. Foolish O's, you will kill us both," he shouted, stumbling back, showing the whites of his palms. "Damnation, eternal damnation." Vesper continued, pumping her closed fist above her head, her life blood running down her arm and spilling on the cobblestones before vanishing like rain on parched earth. "Grant me your boons so that I may vanquish my enemies. I offer my blood, my body, my life." Her muscles tensed and her body tingled as a blast of icy cold staggered her. In front of her a flickering shadow surged, its shape twisting and bending in a way that made her stomach heave. For a heartbeat it grew to an immense size, a mountain of darkness that encompassed everything she could see, looking like it could devour the world. An instant later it was smaller than a gnat, so tiny and feeble that she could crush it with a finger. The shadow came closer and she recoiled, only to freeze in place when it passed into her palm. "I am with you, daughter," said Lilith, appearing to stand in front of her, her words no longer a whisper but strong and clear. Vesper knew her immediately. They shared the same dark, mysterious eyes, high cheekbones, and smooth, unblemished skin. But Lilith was taller with full lips and a high forehead, her hair plaited in a long braid that ran down her back. "And now it's time to make this fool suffer for his arrogance. Are you ready? Do you accept me?" Vesper nodded, embracing her, and for a moment she was filled with the knowledge of Ace, of true power to change the universe, her mind overflowing with martial skills beyond anything she had ever imagined. Terrifying rituals that called on powers too alien to behold flooded her being, leaving her gasping for air at the horror of it all. And then just as quickly, it was gone, vanished from her mind like it never was. Vesper staggered, losing her balance and falling toward the cobblestone path. In a panic she tried to raise her arms to catch herself, to not fall on her face, but to her shock, her arms wouldn't respond, and her legs moved without her accord to keep her upright. She was suddenly a passenger in her own body.